Welcome everyone to our Team Church Online Meetup. However you heard about us, we are so excited that you've joined us today. We're going to have some really good conversation about what it looks like to come back to kids ministry, because there is no handbook right now on what it looks like to reopen or be in the process of reopening a kids ministry, during a pandemic. That's a lot. I mean, I looked on Amazon, I looked for, a handbook for it, and there just wasn't one out there. And so I'm really thankful for the relationships that we can cultivate in an atmosphere like this and lean in to each other and what's working for you, what's not working for you, and how can we just really help each other out. So today's really meant to be conversational. What I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce our panelists today that we get to hear from. I've got some questions that I'm just going to pick their brain on, maybe even share some things that we're doing at Champion Center here in Tacoma, Washington. And then at the end, we're going to have some time for Q&A. But here's the deal. As we're talking, if you have some questions that are coming to your mind, please put them in the chat. I'll try and pull them into our conversation, or we can save them for our time at the end together. So let's go ahead and get started by introducing our panelists today. We've got Sarah Hartfield from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Sarah, do you want to say hi to everyone?
Oh my goodness. This is stressful for me. I'm looking at all of you, and I actually just took a drink of my water to clear my throat, and apparently one of my kids washed my cup and didn't wash the soap out, and so I just took a giant drink of soap and tried to keep a straight face the whole time. Oh my goodness.
That's fantastic. Well, we're so glad you're joining us. And Sarah, you and your husband Pace are the lead pastors at One Place Church in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
Yes. We planted kind of a parachute drop about six years ago or so, and I am a very unexpected kids director. I did not see that one coming, but as of just this summer, so this is new for me. We have gotten kids back in the building, so we've been doing that for a few months, but kids ministry is brand new for me.
Amazing. Yeah, and we'll hear a little more of kind of just what you guys are going through right now in your ministry here in a minute. So glad you've joined us, Sarah. And I have got my new friend. We just met here a couple months ago, Morgan from North Carolina at Freedom House. Morgan, you want to introduce yourself? Maybe tell us a little bit of what you do at Freedom House.
I am so, as the youth would say, shook that I get to be on this. So thank you so much. It is such an honor. Our pastors love your church. And my name is Morgan. I have been on staff full-time for 5 years, and I currently oversee our FH Kids team. We call them FH Kids, our kids ministry. And that runs 6 weeks to 6th grade at a global scale. So we have coordinators for each of our 3 on-site campuses, and we also have an online campus. So I get to kind of just oversee that leadership and creatively help with events and fun things that we do globally. In addition to my husband and I overseeing our youth and young adults and the interns, which is like my fave. So, because they're a bunch to handle. But yeah, I've loved kids ministry. I've been doing it for probably 4 of those 5 years being on staff. So it's been a really awesome opportunity. I've learned a bunch along the way.
So awesome. So excited for Morgan to be on. We've got a power panel today. We're going to have a lot of fun picking their brains. And lastly, like I said earlier, my name's Haley, and I am from Champion Center in Tacoma, Washington. We are one church with 5 locations now, which is really exciting. We've been in the Northwest for over 30 years, but our newer locations have just come into the family in the last couple years. And my husband and I, we get to lead a location in a sweet little town called DuPont, Washington. We're right outside of our military base, which, fun fact, is one of the top 5 largest military bases in the United States. So we've got lots of military families in our community. We're loving it here. We also get to oversee, my husband oversees our youth ministry at all 5 locations and works with the different youth directors. And I also get to do the same thing for our church kids ministry. So we're dancing, we're at DuPont, we're hanging out with youth, we're with the kids. We just get to wear lots of hats, which is the fun thing of ministry. Morgan, I would love to start with you. One of the questions that I have for you is, I remember our relationship started back in like July. My friend told me about you. I just gotten off maternity leave, and at that point it was June, July time. COVID still a thing, but now churches were kind of asking the question, or we're in the stages of reopening kids ministry. And so I hopped on the phone with you. I'm like, girl, help me out. Like, what are you guys doing? What's working? What's not? So when did you guys reopen your kids ministry, and what did that process look like for you guys in developing a plan to reopen?
Yeah, definitely. I had to look it up. We had our first weekend for in-person services on May 31st. So the last weekend, the last Sunday of May. And we started Kidsmen from the beginning. I know there were different churches had different approaches. Some just started with, adult services, but at Freedom House, we just have such a high value on our Kidsmen culture. And so we were like, man, we got to serve the whole family. And so we started on May 31st. I could say leading up to that was just comical, because you felt like you didn't know at all what would change within 24 hours. So I learned it wasn't funny at first. It was very frustrating. And then I was like, all right, I'm either going to find this super frustrating for a very long time, or I'm going to be like, okay, so one day we're doing this, the next day we're doing this, And so we made plan A, and we were like, well, scrap that, plan B. And what that looked like was talking with a lot of the facilities, like childcare facilities in the area that were open. We didn't have a lot of churches in the area. We kind of paved the way in our city for that, for churches to be open. And so we didn't have a lot of reference points at that point. But we just talked with childcare facilities in the area that were starting to see children again, in addition to, CDC guidelines, and just trying to obviously honor authority and figure out how we can still do this thing. So it was a lot of conversations. It was a lot of crossing over, getting great ideas from the worship team. And then, oh, you know what, that we all came together as a church family to just figure this thing out, which was really helpful.
Good. It's like all hands on deck. We want to serve our families well, but like, what does that look like? Maybe raise a hand. Has anyone felt like that? In life in general right now, but in ministry, that one day you got to plan, the next day it's got to change, like you just ebb and flow, you flexible and gracious. Yep, I see lots of hands up, lots of thumbs up. And I think that's so good, Morgan, that you just said, we're just going to go with the flow. I know I kind of came to this conclusion that, whatever it takes to reopen our doors, if that means, I gotta wear a mask, or I've got to do whatever we're going to do it. We're going to make it happen, because that's a step forward to reaching our families. So yeah, that mental shift for sure. Sarah, when did you guys reopen your kids ministry, and what did that process look like for you getting ready?
Well, we started back to church in, I think, mid-May. And we went about a month where we just had kids sit with their parents, and we did activity bags that we handed out at the door. And I was great with that, because our kids director transitioned off the team in kind of the end of May. So I just told my husband, okay, I need a month to wrap my brain around kids ministry. And I was telling Haley earlier that we wanted to make a lot of changes from the foundation up. We ended up completely changing our curriculum and kind of configuring a lot of the rooms and our volunteer culture. So we basically built up all over again from the ground in May into mid-June. And so it gave me a month to kind of, figure it out. And so then we opened the kids ministry to the kids of our team who were serving for the last 2 weekends in June, kind of as a soft start. And that way we could get those team back, because obviously if you don't have kids ministry open, a lot of your teams can't serve. And so then starting in the beginning of July, it was open to everybody. And, it was very small, really, for the first month or two. And we also live kind of in a resort town. Coeur d'Alene is a very strong tourist culture. And so a lot of our regulars do not come to church at all in the summer. They're out on the lake or vacationing. And so we knew it would be small numbers, but it was about half of what, we normally see in the summer, which was great for me, because it was a lot easier to kind of figure it all out without, busting at the seams. And obviously we had a fraction of our volunteers serving as well. So I'm glad we did not start strong, or we would have been so overwhelmed.
Yeah. So maybe the trickling in effect came as a blessing, even though like normally like, God, bring the masses. It's like, bring the semi-masses.
Yes, I was like, yeah, don't bring the masses, Lord, or I'm going to have a panic attack. But it really has been a very slow build. And we're starting to see in the last couple of weeks, I think as schools have been, more regular, we're seeing kids coming back.
Yeah. I would love to dive into maybe even some of the nitty gritty logistics, because I think what makes kids ministry unique is, with kids, there's already so many policies, like bathroom policies and snack policies and, the buddy system or whatever. Maybe let's talk about what some of your policies look like, Morgan and Sarah. How many kids are in a classroom right now? Are you having an RSVP system? Did you have it for a season? Did it go away? What are some of the protocols that you've put in place right now that's worked, or maybe even hasn't worked? Like you tried it and said, okay, getting rid of that. Would love to hear from you guys there.
Sarah, would you like to start?
Sure. So some of you are going to be horrified by this if you live in states that have really strong restrictions right now. Idaho is not one of them. We do have a mask mandate in our county. It's not being enforced at all. So it's kind of this interesting, we've really had to balance. There are people who are terrified of COVID and will not come back to church whatsoever. So it doesn't really matter how safe we make it. They're not coming back until it's gone. So we've almost had to go on the other side of, when the mask mandate came out, I had quite a few people on this team and on other teams that I'm over say, I won't serve as long as I have to wear a mask. And then, we've kind of struggled with that a little bit. So we started tight, and but we never worried for kids about social distancing or numbers. And honestly, we didn't need to, because we have very large kids spaces and we had such tiny numbers of kids coming. So we didn't really have to worry about ratios or RSVPs. We did that for general seating the first month. But once kids came back, it was just, bring your kids and we've got space. And I told parents, if your kid comes wearing a mask, I will do everything I can and our team will to make sure they keep their mask on. If you do not want your kid wearing a mask, I'm not going to make your kid wear a mask. And again, that is specific to our culture and our local, up here. And so honestly, it's just been a lot of navigating how to kind of stay in the middle ground, because a lot of times I feel like we're between a rock and a hard place. That if I say everybody 2 and up has to wear a mask, which is what our health district's mandate is, try to keep a mask on a 2-year-old. That's hard, then nobody is going to come to church because it's just not the culture up here. So it's definitely been a juggle of, we've got the thermometers. And so we take kids' temperatures when they walk in, and we have the hand sanitizer, and that's about it. We clean the tables between services, but it's rather flexible at One Place Church right now, or nobody's going to come to church.
So speaking to what Sarah said, we are, I so appreciated our pastor's heart and clear vision for what we wanted for the church and how we wanted our participants to be able to engage, because we got to just mirror that in our kids ministry. So from the beginning, Freedom House has been like, hey, we are yes and, like, it's have it your way, however is best for you. If you need to just live stream because you are high risk, then that is totally fine. We love you. See you there, sis. We've got a great chat, At the same time, if people are like, hey, I want to social distance, I want to come, but I want to kind of keep my distance. We had started with like these high five hands that were kind of like 3 feet long. And so people could just high five those. But actually something that we do now that I wish I had one with me, but we have a green, yellow, and red wristband. So upon entering the building, people get a green wristband if they're like, hey, I'm not social distancing, come give me a big hug. If they're wearing a yellow one, they're like, hi, I'll wave from over here. And then red is just like, hey, I'm really just coming in to get the word, love you. So we do that church-wide, and it's been a huge success because I can just walk up to you, see that it's yellow, and know how I can honor your space. And in regards to Kidsmen, the third option is, as I said, like a green wristband, like, hey, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. And those are the ones that are serving and feeling comfortable to be able to be back in that environment. And so in regards to kids, we do the same thing. We've got temperature takers. We did them on the foreheads, then we started doing them on the wrists, but making sure we are keeping a good temperature. We're giving hand sanitizer. And then we're allowing, if kids want to wear masks or parents want their kids to wear masks, absolutely. If not, we aren't making that mandatory. We do have our classrooms at a 50% capacity. We've been trying to maintain that for a while. It's been a little bit over as we've grown. Same with Sarah. When it first started off, it was like, I had this thought, and this might have been so insensitive, I apologize. I just literally was like, everybody's coming back. Like, we're all just going to party. And then I got there and I was like, there's not a lot of people here. And it was a good reminder to me that, like, hey, everybody's in different places in their life and processing this differently. And so all that to say, I was ready to see everybody. But we didn't really need the ratios for the first few months, like Sarah said. So we're now kind of hitting those capacities where we get to spread into multiple classes. But yeah, we did 50% capacity in the classrooms. We've got some cleaning supplies that we've been using. We sent out all of our protocol in an email to parents to try to ease some of their nerves of coming back in. That was something that was really helpful. We post the product that we use and kind of the guidelines that we use on the doors of each of the classrooms. So just some things like that have really tried to just settle some initial nerves for people. In addition to, we got these cool decals that say, like, welcome back, we're glad you're here. And we put them like at least 6 feet, if not 8, down the hallway. Even if it's a visual comfort, like, oh, okay, we're trying to space ourselves out here. Because we know like that's in the hallway, but particularly in the classrooms, kids ministry is about connecting with them, getting on the ground, playing with them, praying with them. And so we knew that wasn't going to be social distancing in a kids' classes. At least for us, it wasn't going to work. So we reduced our ratios for that to be able to happen safely.
Thank you for sharing all that information. I can echo, we have some of the things that you guys have said already, what's working at Champion Center. We have opened our doors as of Sunday, September 13th. So we have been going for 6 weeks, and everything's going pretty well so far. I think, like you had mentioned though earlier, Morgan, like having this mindset, you know what, we're going to try this. And if we need to tweak it the next week, that's totally fine. And just being really fluid. And it's been cool because I feel like families and those who are coming are pretty flexible and gracious as well with all of the protocols, because I think people have just been kind of conditioned. When you go to Costco, this is what it looks like. Or when you go to the grocery store, you know, these are some of the things that are in place. And so something that's worked for Champion Center right now in the season is we are operating at 50% capacity. Sarah, I remember you saying that at one point you did have the RSVP system, but then you ended up just getting rid of it because it wasn't really a need.
Right. Well, we don't have state regulation wise, we do not have capacity limits for gatherings. So we don't have to have them. So we just started really tight, and everybody had to have an RSVP. And so all of our seats were socially distanced, and our Connect team did a great job with that. And then as we kind of headed back toward, you know, just being able to feel, you know, our church's kind of thoughts on it, we still have socially distanced seats available, and you can do an RSVP online, and we have families that do it every single week. But the vast majority, at least 90% of our church, they're not social distancing. And sure. As a rule follower, it kind of stresses me out a little bit. And like I said, my husband and I lead our church. So it's not just kids ministry I have to think about, but like the whole church. And we don't really want to end up in the newspaper, you know, all of that. And so far it's been fine. That's pretty much the feel in our community, is everybody has the signs on the doors and all those things. And then unless it's a business that's like a large corporation, nobody's really policing it a whole lot. So we've just kind of stuck with that. So now there's not a lot of social distancing.
Yeah. I like how you said not policing it. So something that we'll say, one of our values at Champion Center is we consider everyone. And so everyone that's going to walk through our doors, we want to consider where they're at. And the fact, for some people, for them just to step foot on the campus is a big step for them. And we want to consider them and we want to celebrate them. We're glad that they're here. And so the verbiage that we've equipped our volunteers with, we're encouraging people in Washington area, the mask mandate is still a thing. We're encouraging people who come to wear a mask, but we're not going to police it. We're just glad that they're here. Now, I did see, Tiana, I saw your question in the chat. Are you requiring your kids volunteers to wear masks while they serve? If so, how do you help enforce and encourage them to keep it on? So in Washington State, I think that's a really good point, Sarah. It depends where you're at in the country. It's just different. In Washington, if you're not wearing a mask in a public area, it's like, it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of our culture right now. So we do ask our kids team to wear masks just out of considering everyone and where they're at, because we're serving people today. And it hasn't been an issue. Like, they totally get it. It's part of what we've done in our team training. We can get into that here in a little bit. And then kind of what we just said, people coming to church, attending, we're going to encourage it, but not police it. So I hope that answers your question okay. But it is interesting, right? Depending on where you're at in the country, it's going to feel so different. I'm seeing a couple more questions. I think this is really great to pull these into our conversation. And then maybe we can talk about some team training. We had someone ask, what has worked really well in training old and new volunteers since COVID? So let's talk about it. Team training. What is that process? Morgan, we'll start with you. What did that process look like to train your team to really feel confident to come back and serve our kids and families well?
Sure. So it's interesting. I think something I learned very quickly was start having the one-on-one conversations and continue to have those volunteer by volunteer. And that sounds a little bit overwhelming, because if your team's really big, which we've got 3 campuses, and our largest campus, at one point we had like 100 volunteers on our central team. And so that can feel a little daunting, but the reality is every story is different and everybody's handling this and processing this different. And so our team leads, or myself and my coordinators, speaking to our team leads and then speaking to our volunteers, really asking them, hey, how is this going in your life? What's God calling you to do next? Is he asking you to stay at home? Do you have peace about that? Are you feeling the draw to come back to the church? I say all of that to say, that's not necessarily on the training part, but it is a great start to connect with your volunteers, because it can come as a shocker if you and again, out of personal experience, I was like, guys, guess what? We're all coming back to church. And they were like, I was literally expecting joy emojis. And I pitched it to our team, and I was like, this is it. And I pitched it to our team leaders, and I have the Zoom call. I recorded it because I was like, I'm going to share this with everyone. And I got off. I was like, I am not sharing that with anyone. I was like, everybody was so nervous and all that to say, it made me realize hey, we really need to be sensitive to everybody's concerns and talk about that and pitch that and share what we're trying to share in consideration to people's stories, with no pressure for them to feel at the end of the day, if you're not going to come back to serve until the end of November, love you. Hey, I hope I see your kids at the baseball game next week. So that I just feel like that's a prereq to, before we get into the nitty gritty, really knowing people's lives and knowing their stories. And it's going to help you and them decide for the best, hey, am I ready to come back to serve or not? But I'll just keep it brief in regards to training. We just sent out, we didn't have a group come together. We didn't make it too complicated. We kind of just said, hey, if you want to wear a mask, our kids volunteers, it's not mandatory that they wear a mask. They can. We do take their temperatures. We do hand sanitizer. We say, hey, let's try to keep an arm's distance, which I know, what is it if it's not 6 feet these days? I know. But we just basically said, hey, here's the new flow. Here's the things we're implementing we'd love for you to see. And if I just stay in the vein that I'm in sharing this, it's that we did it one-on-one. like we really talked with volunteers and shared so that they, first of all, if we got them in a big group and all of a sudden everybody's like, well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, it can feel like dissension. And we quickly realized like, hey, there's going to be people with a lot of feelings about this. So let's go one-on-one to them and talk to them about this before bringing everyone together.
I love the care side of things though. And I think that is so important that you brought that up. I can think of a particular situation. We have a volunteer at our Tacoma location who has served in our kids ministry for over 30 years. Like he was my teacher in kids class. And, when it came to us coming back to church and volunteering, he's like, my heart wants to be there so bad, but I just can't. And we're like, we love you and we understand. And if anything, we're trying to figure out ways for people who, for whatever reason, just aren't able to be in the classrooms yet or back at our physical locations. How can we still pull them in this season? Whether that means just giving them a phone call. Hey, how you doing? Just want to check in on you. I know we do on Sunday mornings something called a lobby huddle where all of our team will come together in the lobby and we just pump each other up for the day. Something we've been doing is we've been inviting our team to a Zoom call, and we'll bring them to the lobby huddle on a little computer and celebrate them. So little ways that you can still care for your team and help them feel included during this season. So that was really great, Morgan. Thanks for touching on that. Sarah, anything with like getting the team ready for reopening, or even right now, what you're doing to continue to equip them?
I mean, again, ours is a little different because we all, we were on online only, and then the whole kids team found out that the kids director who helped us start the church, so she was the face of kids ministry, had stepped down. And then surprise, I'm your kids director. And so it's just been a massive shift in every way. And so I met with our entire kids team that first week to let them know that I would be, taking kids. And since then, I've done kind of what Morgan has done. It's been very much one-on-one. And we have had quite a handful who had stepped down right before she quit, or because of COVID had stepped down. And so I just try to stay in touch with them, see how they're feeling. I've got some who aren't going to come back until there's no such thing as a coronavirus. I mean, they're just very, very worried about it. And so I just, remember to check in with them. But it has been interesting to see how many people have stepped up. And I have just over and over again preached really to them that church is the only consistent thing in kids' lives right now, especially up here in Coeur d'Alene. They, schools opened late, and then they opened where it was 2 days a week, and then they went to 5 days a week, and now they're going back to 2 days a week, and parents are frustrated. And so it's just been a lot of upheaval in kids' lives. And I keep reminding our team, we are the one consistent thing in kids' lives right now, which is also why we're pushing for as much normalcy as we can do safely so that it doesn't feel weird. And so just kind of that one-on-one and constantly casting the vision of what this means to families to have a kids ministry that is open has really helped. And so we are actually seeing our team grow, which has been tremendous, because I think when we started, I had like a 30% drop off. And again, summer, so nobody wants to serve in the summer. So I had a handful of people who have served every single week, and that's not their normal. They're normally every other week. And they did it for me for the entire summer up in our elementary program so that we could, fill the rooms, because there were a couple of times we had to combine ages and rooms because we did not have the volunteers. And so people have been very flexible. North Idaho is an extremely laid back area. So that helps people. I saw one of the questions was, how did people respond to not opening right away with kids and then just having it where it was teen kids? Nobody ever complained. I think people here are pretty flexible. And so they were just glad that we were going to open it all. And that has helped tremendously.
That's so helpful to hear that. I'm looking at some of our questions, or even just comments. Travis said, we wear a clear face shield so that the kids can still see our face. I love that. Being able to see, it's like, how do you express emotion with just your eyes? You know, if you are wearing masks, like, so excited to see you. So that's a great idea.
The wristbands are just less bulky, right? And you can kind of get a person's vibe off the color of their wristband rather than like, I'm going to come up to you. But they were, for the moment, it's one of those things, you said this and I love it, is that this period has really forced creativity. And I'm naturally like a creative solutions person, but at first I was like, okay, thinking like all my ideas were going to work. And then I realized I have to hold them with like an open hand, even the new ideas with an open hand. But it really has, like, our pastors have really been like, hey, no idea is a bad idea. Let's go. And that idea came from one of our facilities guys. Like, seriously, he was like, I think we should have hands on sticks and whatever. And for like 2 months, we printed them. We had like better together, 6 feet apart printed on them. And people were just like using them, and it was great. And for the moment, it served such a great purpose. And so all to say, you never know who's got the best ideas. So keep the table open for everyone. And then when you have a room that allows creativity, like, and you're just like, hey, no idea is a bad idea, you might end up with hands on sticks that benefits your church community. You just don't know.
I think it's so true. It's limitations does force creativity to come out of you. I know one thing that has been birthed, at least in the church kids ministry world, is when we shut down and there was a stay-at-home order, and we didn't know we weren't going to reopen until September. So March to September, how do we reach kids at home? And we had an awesome experience at our locations on a Sunday, but just being transparent, our online experience for kids was pretty much non-existent. And so we had to start from scratch. Like, what does this look like? And over time, something called the Church Kids Show was birthed into the Champion Center family. And I have one of our team members putting a link in the chat right now. If you want to check it out, you can go to our YouTube page and see how we're doing church kids ministry now. And so what we do is we produce the Church Kids Show every week, and it is streamed on YouTube and all of our online platforms. So it's still engaging and pulling in families that are still at home right now. But then what's really cool is that inspired us to completely redo the way that we do kids ministry at our locations, because the kids loved it so much. And so, it's amazing what God can do in a season where you feel like there's so many limitations, but if anything, I think there's been a lot of good too that has come out of this season and having some limitations and having to get creative. So that's something that's worked for us. If you get a second, go check it out. It's a lot of fun. But I would love to hear, maybe let's start with Sarah. Is there anything in this season that you feel like has been amazing? Like, what's worked for you in this season, or what are some things that have kind of bubbled up to the surface that you didn't know were there? Just anything in that nature.
I think one of our what was lacking the most in our kids ministry, the programming was great. Our facilities were great. Our team was great. We had really terrible team appreciation, like really terrible. And I know because I served in elementary for 4 years when we started the church, and it was terrible, the appreciation. And for somebody who works with kids every week or every other week, you like to be appreciated. There's a big difference between working with preschoolers or second graders than there is greeting at a front door. I mean, it just takes a lot more. And so that's kind of my heart, and has always been my heart, is one-on-one appreciation. So when I started, I wrote a card to every single volunteer that we had, and and invited them to a team night and kind of gave them the vision of what this was going to look like. But I would say what's worked for us mostly is just that investing into our team. And I have an assistant, and she and I do it every single week, and we pick 4 people and off the team, and they get a handwritten note, and they get their favorite snacks in a cute bag, and they're waiting for them on Sunday morning, because I feel like we have 6 years of not appreciating people, and you could tell by our quit rate was so high. And so it's been exciting to see people who have served in our ministry for years who have a lot more pep in their step, because I think they realize, A, this is a really crucial time to serve in a kids ministry. But B, how much I appreciate them and how much our team appreciates them has kind of given them new life. And I think the blessing of this season when our numbers are lower globally in the church is that it gives us more time to focus on who's there. And it's not just this massive team of people that maybe you high five them when they come in and out, like they know how necessary they are, because if they're not there, we're going to have rooms that we have to close. And they know how much I appreciate them and how much their leads appreciate them, because we have the time now to tell them. And so we are seeing people coming back. And I really think it's because they finally feel appreciated. So that's kind of what we focused on in this season while we have smaller numbers.
That is amazing, Sarah. Thank you for sharing that and just what your journey has looked like this year. Like, I'm sure at the top of 2020, you weren't thinking all these things were going to come your way. We're going to go through a massive kids transition and then a pandemic.
Yeah, well, and we have had a senior in high school. And so I really did spend the first part of 2020 sad that he was going to move to California, and like excited for him, but he's our oldest. And so I had all this like mom angst. My oldest is leaving the coop, but it's California. So he is down in the basement doing school on his laptop. And so it's just, this year has, like for everybody, not been at all what I expected. I did not think I would be, having to kind of prop him up because he is not doing what he thought he was going to be doing. And I homeschool our other 3 kids. So it's been one heck of a year. And God has been very faithful. I don't really want to do this year again, but I wouldn't take it back either, because it's been, it's just, I think God is teaching us things that we would have not heard without a pandemic.
Absolutely. And I love how you talked about like really caring for the team and like helping them know like you are so seen and you are so loved and valued and appreciated, and you're helping invest into our kids. Like, and if we're going to invest in anything, investing into our team so it's healthy, because healthy things grow. And so having the time and the focus to do that, it's just so great. Morgan, what would you say has been your biggest win in this season?
Yeah, I definitely echo Sarah. I think that's so wonderful. And I wrote this down, quality over quantity, because really that's what it's been. So before we talk briefly on that, practically we have decluttered everything, which is awesome. Like if you've got a few more weeks, write down the 3 things that you're like, I just never had time for that. And then do it. Because literally we're like, our resource room is like the junk drawer of the kids ministry. And so I was like, we will clean this because we have time. And now I'm like, yay, look, we it's kind of like you get that fresh start, it feels like. And so we did that early on thinking like, oh, we've only got a couple weeks. And now it's like kind of getting a little junky again. It happens. But all to say, we got to clean it out initially. So if there's 2 to 3 things that you're like, man, I just felt like I never had time to do that, definitely do them, because then it's kind of like a fresh haircut. Like then you go back in and you're like, yeah, I feel good. But then also quality over quantity, like same that Sarah was saying, we've not seen as many people, volunteers, etc. So that 100% that we would want to give to 100 people, now we get to give it to 30. And so not lowering our standard of excellence because there's less people, continuing the standard of excellence. And also it's really taught us to not see, what is the saying, forest through the trees? I think it's like, instead of like just seeing the big picture, like it might be literally the opposite of that saying. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Let me get there. Like we've gotten to see each individual tree rather than on a weekend where you're just like, high five, bye, see you, Johnny. It's like, Sarah, how's your mom doing? And I think busyness can create that unintentionally. And so when we slow down, it's really helped us to be able to say like, oh man, now we're building quality relationships with our team in a way that we hadn't before.
Mm-hmm. Quality over quantity, and enjoying those trees in the forest.
I was like, I think that's it. Something like that.
I hear you. That's so great. Yeah. Caring for people and for them to feel seen. That's huge Absolutely huge. And I love, Tiana, you're asking lots of great questions in the chat. How have you reached out to kids and families who have not come back yet to your church? Something that we did, I think, in April, maybe post Easter season, because when COVID hit, at least this is what it felt like for us. And I've heard a lot of my friends say the same thing, is there was this big swell of, we're going to reach everyone in our church. We're going to make phone calls and text messages and Zoom calls. And we're going to check on every single person. And then Easter happened, and it just kind of felt like things just kind of settled a little bit. And we were kind of bothered, like, we don't want to lose that. We want people to stay engaged, stay pulled into community as best as we can. And we ended up sending little "We Miss You" cards to our church kids in the mail. And little gestures like that, it's pretty fun. I remember as a kid, if I got mail, that was a really big deal. And so we're like, you know what, let's do something that just makes them feel seen. So that was a very small gesture, but we found it went a long way. And that, I don't know, Morgan or Sarah, if you guys have anything that you guys have done to reach families, team volunteers who maybe aren't coming to your locations right now.
Something that we implemented is we just pull birthdays of all the kids who had come this year, so that we're not sending them to, kids who visited with their grandparents 2 years ago. Sure. But anybody who's come this year and lives, relatively locally, we send them a birthday card. And so my assistant writes them, and then she leaves them in the environments for all the leaders to sign every Sunday. And then she mails them. And what was so great is, you kind of wonder, like, does this matter? Do they care getting a birthday card from their leaders? But my 8-year-old had a birthday this month, and I forgot that we had a card for her. And so she went with me to get the mail and saw that she had mail from OPC Kids, and like the stamps are little happy birthday stamps. It's very, very birthday-ish. And so I read her the card, and she saw that her favorite small group leader was one of the leaders who had signed it. And she was ecstatic and said, I am keeping this for the rest of my life because Mr. Art signed it and he knows it's my birthday. And so that goes out to every kid who's been this year, whether they've been since COVID or not. And then the assistant kids director and I do that for all of our leaders' birthdays, and we mail them a birthday card as well. And so that's not really specific to whether or not you've come back or not. It was just one more touch that I felt like we were lacking before, and just trying to make this ministry more personalized. That seems to make a difference and make people know that we're thinking about them, whether they're back in church or not.
That's so sweet. Little things go a long way to people, even adults. I love Nikki put in the chat, with capacity limitations, have you had to turn many families away, or is that naturally balanced out with less people ready to return to in-person gatherings? I'll tell you at Champion Center, yes, we have. In fact, I misquoted our verbiage. I know, Morgan, you said you're at 50% capacity right now. Yep. Are you doing RSVPs? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
No, that's okay. So we started, Sarah, we're in the same boat, sis, because we started and then it was like, the need wasn't there. Mm-hmm. And so we kind of just fizzled out on that. And we are trying to run our classrooms right now at 50% capacity. And we're just of late hitting where we're needing to break off into multiple classes. Because we kind of consolidated when we first opened. We did intentionally combine a couple classrooms because of the quantity of kiddos and the quantity of volunteers. And so combining them really helped us in that aspect. But now we're starting to see that we can break off. We're actually getting volunteer applications in, which is like, I don't know why that shocks me, but like, it's felt like everybody's kind of like the world is panicking. But then in the church, you're like, hey, got some new volunteers. And you're like, this is so cool. So God is definitely doing his thing in his church. But all to say, so we're at 50% capacity, but we're only lately seeing the need to split. And we haven't really faced the challenge of having to turn people away at this point.
Okay. That's really good feedback. At Champion Center, we have had to keep our RSVP system even 6 now, going on 7 weeks in, because we've got it. I guess it depends what location you're at, because the further north you go towards Seattle, we have a Bellevue location. we're finding that it's been a bit more of a slower trickle, but we're down south. And we're having lots of people wanting to show up with their kids, which is cool. But what that looks like right now are auditoriums, because we're in phase 2 in Washington State. The limitations are we're operating at a 25% capacity. In our kids ministry, the verbiage, I misquoted that. I just echoed what Morgan said. Our verbiage that we're using is we're operating a limited capacity, but internally we know we're trying to keep our kids numbers at like 25% right now, just due to where we're at as a state. And so, yeah, we have had people RSVP. For example, one of our classrooms, I think we can only have, like 5 or 8 kids if we're keeping at that cap number. And then once we've hit that, if families show up, our verbiage is usually like, we're so glad you're here. But unfortunately, right now, we're operating at a limited capacity in our classrooms. We'd still love for you guys to join us, but in our main auditorium, here's a little activity bag for you. And if there's not enough room in the auditorium, then we typically have an overflow room. And so that's what that process has looked like. So hopefully that's helpful. I find out those little activity bags, again, a small gesture, but if you have something like you can't come to class, but here's a little bag of trinkets, it helps like soften the blow. I don't know if you'd say the same, Morgan.
Yeah. And also just another quick thought. We went from serving goldfish. Goldfish is like the snack of Kidsmen. And we used to serve it in big tubs, right? And you go to Sam's Club and you get all the things. Well, we're doing individual bags now. That was another simple switch over. It's a little more pricey because bulk. When you buy them in big bags, we would just keep them in containers and scoop them out. But for sanitary purposes, we're doing pod waters. I call them pod waters. I guess that's not what they are, but they're like the little baby waters. And then individual goldfish bags. And then we also have a gluten-free option, which is our veggie straws. So that's just another super simple tip. And also being very clear with your parents that these are the things we're doing. These are the steps we're taking, because parents always appreciate that. And even just this down to the signs being on the doors or the email going out saying, here's our protocol, totally email us back if you've got any questions. It just keeps the door open for conversation without there being assumption, potentially for the negative that would keep a family from coming.
I think that's a great point. Parent communication. I know something that we gleaned from, I'm actually going to have our team put it in the chat right now. It is a link to C3 Global Ministries. It's Pastor Ed and Lisa Young. If you click that link that we're going to put here in just a moment, that's something that I used, I think back in June. They had just opened kids ministry in Texas, and they just kind of shared like what worked for them, what didn't. And one of the things that they said was they did a welcome back video for parents that said, here's everything that you can expect when you arrive at our location. So we stole like an artist and we did the exact same thing. And that video alone helped us just answer a ton of what ifs and a ton of questions. So before opening weekend and a couple weeks into us reopening, we would resend that out to all of our parents. Hey parents, we're so excited. Church Kids is open again. And here's what you can expect when you arrive at our locations this Sunday. Talked about the RSVP system, talked about the temperature check. Our team's going to be wearing masks and all these things. That's another, like one of the small policies and procedures of Church Kids, like snack policy. What are you doing? We have, same thing, Morgan, pre-wrapped snacks that we'll give to the families, when the kids are getting picked up, and if they want to eat it, great. If not, no big deal. So all those little things, I found that a video that literally answers all the questions, and it's fun, it's upbeat, it's informational, is really helpful. So if you click on that link, scroll down to, there's a kids webinar, lots of great information that I was kind of able to pick apart. And then lots of actually great resources that C3 just gives to you for free. Some of the things are going to be like the health screening posters that you see, when you go to any store nowadays. If you're experiencing these symptoms, come back when you're not sick. Along with even some verbiage that you can use to equip your volunteers on how to respond to parents. Lots of great stuff on there. I would encourage you to check it out. And it's free. Gotta love free resources. So I love it. I saw someone ask, what are some of the items that you've been putting in the little bags? We go on this lovely site called Oriental Trading and buy just little trinkets, like little stress balls. Yes, if you're in kids ministry, gotta love Oriental Trading. Little things that just keep their hands busy during service. Another thing that we've encouraged parents to do, if for some reason they can't bring them to class. Or we've also had parents who are like, we're going to come to church as a family, but I'm not ready for my child to be in class yet. That's been another thing too. We encourage them to bring like a phone or a tablet where they can put their earphones in and then watch the church kids show on their tablet. The goal is that kids would have something to do to keep themselves busy while their parents are trying to, listen to the message, because as much as we love our 3-year-olds, they just get, they want to be busy, right? So we haven't had any of those stress balls fly across the auditorium yet, but I'm like banking there's going to be a day we're going to see one just go flying. So yeah, Oriental trading is your friend. Trying to think, any other questions? Would love to answer. We've got about 6 minutes left of our time together. Or anything, Morgan or Sarah, you wanted to speak to that maybe you didn't get to earlier?
Yeah, I'd like to say, just for everybody on here, first of all, thanks for what you do, because it's so important. We say kids ministry, we call our kids the now generation at Freedom House. And we say that's because people are never too young to experience Jesus and to do something great for him. And we say that children's ministry is prepare work, adult ministry is repair work. And so what would you rather have to do, And it can get really tough. And some days ministry is hard. But I guess I want to, first of all, thank you, because we're speaking to people well, not really globally, I guess, nationally on this call, and maybe internationally, who are doing this and watching this back later. Thank you for your investment in these kids. You're investing in our future, and that is just priceless. And then also keep your chin up, because I always am so encouraged when I come on these calls, or I've had conversations with other churches, and I'm like, so this is terrible. Like, this element is going awful. And they're like, us too. And I'm like, thank you, because we're in this together. Like, we are totally in this together. And God cares about his bride more than any of my laborious hours could achieve. And so just know that if you're putting in your effort, God's going to match it. He's going to meet up. He's got you. He's got your Kidsmen. And of course, if there's anything that we can ever do, like, please reach out. I would love to share more information. I know Haley would too. We've got resources. We would just love to connect. Like, we're the big church together, and let's do that. Let's be that. It's been a tough year, but it's been a good one.
Yep. God's still working. He is. And we are the church with the capital C. And I love that you said, like, he's still building it, And so to stay encouraged, though, that people are in the trenches with you, like, I feel you. I did love this. We got a couple more questions left. What did the first day back look like for Kidsmen? Maybe rewind. What would be something that you would tell yourself on that first day? Maybe that's a good way to put it. Sarah, do you want to share? What would that first day look for you guys?
Well, our first day was a little, again, we were in just a different situation with, changing kids directors right in the middle of this, but we actually had to have like a placeholder curriculum for those 2 weeks of just teen kids only, because we weren't ready to launch the curriculum that we were switching to. And so we used something from the Bible Project that they were going to use for VBS this year. And so that's kind of what we used. But I think the key for us just this whole year has been flexibility and just patience with where people are. That COVID has been hard universally for lots of different reasons. And it's been hard, I think, emotionally for most people. And so Christina and I think I just saw her, I think she's actually on this Zoom right now. She's our assistant kids director. And we every single week end up texting to each other loaves and fishes, because we come into the weekend thinking we're not going to be covered. Somebody bailed on us at the last minute, or, like, who on earth is going to watch the toddlers today? And every single week since we've been doing this in mid-June, God has provided. It's like Jesus and the boy with the loaves and fishes every week. And we have just learned tremendous flexibility and patience with people's process, because people are just struggling with this. And I think that COVID has revealed a lot of things in us that's not healthy. And as people try to figure that out and figure out what their relationship in a church community looks like. It's just been a lot of upheaval for people. And so it'd be really easy to be frustrated with team for not wanting to come back, especially when we're trying to do things safely. And knowing that if team doesn't come back, we don't have a kids ministry because we cannot single-handedly watch all the kids. And so we've just learned tons of flexibility and kind of rolling with it and not holding it too tightly and not thinking that any idea or curriculum or method is the only way to do it. And so it's just been neat to see God provide and to continue to remember that this is not my church. This is not my kids ministry. This is the global church and it's God's church. And he cares so much more than I do. And he is also not waking up at 3:00 in the morning panicking over it, you know? And so if he is not stressed about it, I don't need to be stressed about it, and to just go with it. And it's been good. It's been very good. It's been a good growing process for sure.
Fishes and loaves. Come on, somebody. I'm so stealing that. I'm going to start texting my team fishes and loaves emoji and they're like, what are you talking about? God's going to provide. You know what? I can so echo that because there have been probably every week I'm like, God, like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do that? And at the 11th hour, God sends someone, hey, just throwing it out there. I'm like, yes, we'll take you. He's got this, you guys.
Literally, like, people will, I don't know if this has happened to y'all. If Danielle, my central leader, were in here, she'd be laughing with us because literally it's like, okay, well, Jesus, you are our only option at this point. Can you come and be in here, please? And then like somebody rolls in and is like, hey, I'm on schedule, right? And I'm like, you are right now. Hey, welcome to Kids Church. They like got their schedule mixed up. That's where you see God is so practical. Like he's not going to leave us hanging. So he comes through, even like you said, in the 11th hour where you're like, okay, it's going to be me and Jesus watching these kids. Then somebody comes in because he wants quality for them too. Like this Kidsmen isn't meant to just be childcare. It's meant to be a growing environment. And sometimes in these seasons, we want to settle for a little bit less because we're like, yeah, but I have all these reasons to settle for less. No. God's church deserves excellence. And when we pray and we say, yo, God, we want to serve you with this level of excellence, he meets you there. He meets you there. And then he sends people in their bright green shirts and you're like, praise you.
Oh, so good. So be encouraged, friends. If you find yourself in a wreck, God has got you. He's going to make a way, even if it doesn't feel like there's a way. So I am bummed because we're actually past our time. I would love to keep chatting, but want to honor everyone's time. So first of all, Sarah and Morgan, thank you so much for just pouring your heart out and just letting us pick your brain and lean in and what's worked, what hasn't. We're so thankful for your time, and God bless you guys and what you're doing and the mantles that you're carrying in your communities to reach more people during a crazy season, but when people need it most, right? Because we are the church and we are a city on a hill. We're the light in the darkness. We're God's plan A. Come on, somebody. We can be encouraged. This is our time to shine. But God bless you guys. Have an amazing day and keep running your race strong. Take care, everyone.